So it's still on fire, and they don't even know the extent of the damage because they can't get in because it's still on fire. That sounds like a regular software project to me. I've been in a project that was on fire, and it was so much on fire, we didn't have time to fix the fire. We just created new fires. What? You won't have the sign for me? Thank you. So I won't know when the time is over. So 5 minutes before, I want you to do a special signal for me. When it's 5 minutes before the end, I want the crowd, I want the crowd. We'll do self-organization. I want the crowd to go like this. Okay? You're going to feel stupid, but that's okay, because I'm going to feel stupid if you don't do it. So it's better than you than me. Four minutes. What shall we talk about now? This is like retrospective meeting. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? Who's to blame? Are you saying you're to blame? What? We have a full, no, that's not a full room. It's a half full room, but we always have to see the half full room. That's what I always tell people. I also noticed in the 3 minutes we have left, I would like to discuss a serious situation. There is a huge scalability problem in the men's room. Huge. The queue length did not match the number of workers. The only solution is, well, there are two solutions. Double the amount of men's rooms, or create a men's room interface for both the men and women's rooms. Two minutes left. What shall we talk about now? What? Stress testing for? For the men's room? I think that's been done already. And it failed. And I'm a big believer in test-driven development, so technically now we know what's wrong. We can fix it. We're red. Now actually we're yellow. One minute left. What shall we talk about now? Any topics? Raise your hand if you're a technical or a team lead of some sort. Raise your hand if you plan to be. Raise your hand if you have and you've decided to stop doing it. So interestingly, it's almost the same people. Okay, what does everyone else do? Who is an architect? Okay, Scrum Master. Scrum Mistress. One guy raised his hand, by the way. Thank you, sir. True diversity. Okay, let's begin. Are we agile enough? Can we start while people are still coming in? Should we start? Yeah. So I'll remind you, 5 minutes before the talk ends, you have to go like this, okay? And I'm probably going to be so stressed out by the end of the talk, then I will have no idea why you're doing it. And I won't remember that I have 5 minutes left. But still, let's see what happens. Okay. First thing, let's talk about me. First topic, favorite topic. My name is Osherove. I'm a consultant. Actually, I spent the last 5 years traveling in Scandinavia and in the United States, working in some of the world's biggest companies, and helping to implement DevOps and continuous integration and continuous delivery, failing sometime, succeeding some others, and learning a lot in the process. And I learned a lot about the stuff that was missing because I had a good mentor who was working with me. When I started out in the software development, which was about 20 years ago, I actually started out in VB6. And, well, basic first computer, that doesn't count. But VB6 actually got paid to do that. And a while later, I started learning about unit testing, and it really stuck a chord with me, and test-driven development. And I wrote a book called The Art of Unit Testing. And then that book came out as a second edition, and about 9 years later, maybe even 10 years after the first book came out, I found out I was still talking about the same problems, the same issues. That is, everybody was learning about unit testing, but everyone was still at the beginning of that. No one was, well, no one, but a lot of people still came to me with those very, very beginner questions of where to get started, naming conventions. And I realized a lot of organizations are really, they're trying to implement that stuff, but they're failing. And I thought, how could they fail? I mean, everyone agrees that unit testing is a good thing, right? Everyone, if I talk to a software team, they'll say, yeah, unit testing is definitely a good thing, and we definitely should do that. And then nobody does that. And that really annoyed me because, well, first, I get annoyed very easily. But second, it annoyed me because as a team leader, I tried to do the same thing. I believed in those things, I still do, but it was very difficult for me to actually get other people to do those things. And that's part of what this talk is about. Is that what happens when you know what the right thing is, but you can't make it happen? I wrote a book called Elastic Leadership, which talks about a lot of what this talk is about. I'm actually doing courses about that stuff. And I'm currently writing a third book called Enterprise DevOps. That's my workshop tomorrow. That book kind of contains the other two. Because I believe if we want to implement DevOps and continuous integration, continuous delivery in organizations, the only way forward is to actually understand how people work and understand where people are coming from if you want to make that kind of change. So it's not just specifically about tooling. Tooling will only get you as far as the machine. But to actually get people to use the tooling correctly, to actually use it in a way that's effective, that's a whole different thing. That's what this talk is about. Okay, and I want to stress, this is not just for tech leads. This is, well, let's see if we can ask ourselves, are we a leader? Are we fit for this talk? What's a leader? Here's my definition for a leader. If you are a bottleneck, you are potentially a leader. Sad but true. Bottleneck. You might have heard this as the bus factor. Who knows what a bus factor is? Some people, that's good. Maybe 20% of people here, which makes them the bus factor, by the way. The bus factor is the amount of people who have to get hit by a bus for the team to stop working. Okay? Bus factor of 1 is the worst. But every team has one or more bus factors. That one person who knows about the database, the one person who knows about the build process, the one person who gets to decide on the architecture, the one person who approves the pull request. Yes, I just said it, pull requests are not great for an Agile team. Well, for open source one where you don't trust people, that's good. But if you trust people, having a person between you and the repo is a bottleneck. So if you're a bottleneck, you're potentially a leader. And I say potentially because a lot of people who are bus factors, who are bottlenecks, don't use their ability to become a leader to actually change things. And it's those people, a lot of times, that prevent the organization, the team, from moving forward. But how do you get people to change the way they work, right? People like the Scrum Master, the architect, front end, everyone who has a specialty. And they're the only people in the team, or one of the few people in the organization that knows about that specialty, are a good candidate for that. So bus factors, bottlenecks. If you're one of them, this talk is for you. What's the problem? Well, it took me a long time to actually decide what the problem really is. So I'll start with Scrum, because Scrum really helps to understand the problem a lot. I'm not saying Scrum is the problem, although to many people here, it might prove to be at some point. Well, what is Scrum really? It's a framework, it's a process that tells you kind of how to work inside boundaries. And it gives you the boundary of a sprint, it gives you the backlog, very, very simple rules of how the team should work. And at the end of the sprint, there's a valuable or an increment of a valuable product. We've all been there, right? And how many people have been in an organization that has taken on Scrum and sprints, and at the end of those 2 or 3 weeks, there was nothing delivered. A potentially unshippable product was delivered. Who has been in those teams? Who is afraid of raising their hands? Your team leads are here. I can see that now. Okay. Here's the thing. A lot of organizations, they say, we'll become agile, we'll do sprints, and then they take the team and they read the book and they send the Scrum Master on a 2-day course. 2 days, that's almost 48 hours. And then they take the team and they put them in a room and they say, you are now hereby declared self-organizing. You shall self-organize and deliver in those 2 weeks. And the team is like this. Actually, we don't have a build server. We don't know how to deliver something in 2 weeks. And if we did, we don't have everyone here necessary, etc. And there are all these questions. The teams become, stressed out because a lot of teams are not ready to take on this kind of responsibility. They're not really self-organizing. And that's hint number 1. Interesting questions start to develop. We're doing sprints, but we're missing deadlines. We thought we'd deliver this, takes us this. We keep missing stuff. We promise things. We can't make promises because we can't keep them. We don't have time, or I don't have time, if I'm a bottleneck, to solve everyone's problems. Too busy. We're not really agile, but no one says anything. Okay? So maybe at some point there is a meeting inside the organization between middle management and upper middle management. They say, we have to push this further. We have to take the next step. And so they bring in Scrum coaches. Scrum coaches says, well, here's what's going to happen. See? And they come in like cowboys. They open the briefcase, whatever. You're going to do this and this. And they're going to be there like cops saying, you didn't do the Scrum. And when you do the Scrum, you're not standing. You're sitting. That's not good. And when you do this and blah, 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 and everyone is like, okay, seriously, stop. Because the main questions are still there. Right? Questions like, why are we still putting out fires if we're doing Scrum? Isn't that supposed to be solved? If I'm a tech lead, what am I supposed to do? What's my role? How do I define success for myself? What's the role of a tech lead in an agile team? What's the role of a Scrum Master? Maybe that's kind of defined. What's a tech lead to do? Maybe there are no tech leads. What's the role of an architect? What's the role of that one person who knows everything about the database? If I'm hiring people, why can't I hire all those agile people everyone keeps talking about? All those amazing people you read about in the newspapers. I'm just kidding. And they're able to, and the 10x developers. 10x developers, that's nice. So a new wave comes in of consultants and coaches. They say, well, you're doing it all wrong. We have to do Kanban. Let's do Kanban. And they get all up Kanban in the organization. And they do this, and they create Kanban boards, step by step, for this and this and this. Your team ends up with this beautiful, amazingly beautiful Kanban board. And you're using it. But still, the main questions are there. Questions like, we have a beautiful whiteboard, but we're still missing stuff. We still have those fires, by the way. What am I supposed to do if I have that one person in the team that nobody can work with? Well, how does Kanban solve that? If I become a tech lead because I'm offered the job, will I lose all my friends? One of my teammates smells, and nobody's saying anything. So a new consultant comes along and says, well, you're doing it wrong. We have to do extreme programming, right? Because Scrum is missing all that stuff, which I agree, by the way. Scrum is missing the day-to-day, test-driven development and pair programming and all these amazing things. So we implement them. But still those questions come back. Man, I wish I could code again. We learned test-driven development, but nobody's doing it. We said we're going to do this stuff. We're working in this Kanban, sprint, whatever it is, Frankenstein, and we want to do all these right things, but we're not doing them. Why are we not doing them? We all agree that we should, then why aren't we doing them? Our meetings suck. We're doing Kanban, but we still have sometimes those retrospectives maybe, whatever, and everyone either blames everybody or they're afraid to say something. So someone says, oh, you know what? You're doing it all wrong. Well, let's do DevOps. DevOps is going to be what solves the problem because it brings infrastructure as code too. And those pipelines, because up until now you've been working as developers, but really you should all be working in the same organization. You from security, and you from compliance, and you from dev, and you from testing. You should all be working together, happy, happy unicorns. Now that, the organization does not like, because the organization is made up of those people, and in large organizations, those people hate each other. And so, we're trying to do DevOps, but first of all, nobody has time for that. We really believe in that stuff. We don't have time. And you know what? My team is doing that stuff, but nobody else is doing that stuff. And where's that security person they promised me? Where's that testing and compliance person that was supposed to be in that feature team? And by the way, my feature team is not even sitting in the same room. What the hell is going on here? And why can't I actually talk? Why am I afraid to talk to my manager about this stuff? And one of my team members actually hates DevOps because he tried it in the previous organization, and now he's convincing everybody else to stop doing it. Okay, what process is going to fix that? Right? What's wrong with me if I'm the tech lead? That I can't fix all those things. They keep throwing all these processes on me, which I agree are not a bad thing. But there is a missing link, and that's what I wanted to explain, is that the problem is not a process problem. It's a people problem. Right? In this agile world, we're expected to accomplish all these things and work with all these different people. Skills like leadership and influence skills become a core skill. They become a core skill because no longer can a developer just sit there and not talk to anyone while they do something. They're going to be expected to talk to everybody. And in a self-organizing team, everyone is expected to do everything. And if there's a problem, everyone is expected to do something about that problem. The worst thing you can do in an agile world is to say, not my problem, right? Someone else's problem. But how do you get people to actually do that? So things to learn in that context. Types of leadership that make sense. If I'm an architect, what type of timeline do I have? What is the maturity level of the team, right? Can I throw a team into a Kanban style if they're not mature enough for it, if they don't know they don't have the right skills? No. How do I know if they have the right skills? Part of this talk will be about that. Influence forces, understanding why people do what they do. This will be, I hope, at some point, a required course in any software development course. Why do we do what we do? Because if we don't understand why that one person in my team is not doing test-driven development, then we won't be able to influence and understand and actually fix it. And what I usually teach people, and that's in the book as well, is that there are 6 different types of forces that can act on a person. It's not just whether they want to or not. It's not just whether they know how to do it. There's also the people around that person. There's the company around that person. And the sentence to take away from that is, and for each person that does something or doesn't do something, the world around that person is perfectly designed for that behavior to happen. And we have to understand what it is that influences that person. And the role of leadership will be to understand and influence different behaviors as the organization changes and accomplishes things. And still, in a very technical way. Right? So if you find yourself saying, man, I wish my team did this, or I wish this, or whatever, we have to understand that we can't just wish things into fruition. We actually have to do something about it. That's personal leadership. That's actually taking a stand internally and personally, whether someone else is doing it or not. Right? If only I had a better team. I hear that from team leads all over, especially when I consult and I say, hey guys, why don't we do unit testing in TDD? And that person says, well, you know, I totally understand what you're saying, but in our company, never going to work. And 99% of people say that. And 99% of the time, they're wrong. But there is this established mythology almost in a company basis that some people can do some things and other people cannot, and you will never be able to change them. And so why even bother? And so the situation becomes status quo. But here's what I'm trying to say. Great teams are grown. They're not hired. You have the team that you have, and your job as a lead or as a bottleneck is to turn the team into the team that you would like to see. Okay? That's the... if there's one thing I ask people to take away from this whole talk, is this. If we want people to change, we have to help them change. We can't just escape the personal relationship we have with those people and the ability for us to help change how they behave. Now, what does that mean? If I'm a security person and everyone keeps making security horrible mistakes, I can do something about it instead of just, you know, stamping yes or no on specific software validation process. So my role as a leader, and how I know I'm successful as a leader, based on this, is to make myself unneeded. What is a true self-organizing team? It is a team that does not need a leader. Right? What is the best team you've ever seen? Maybe you've seen that. A team of team leads. If you've ever seen a team of team leaders work together, you will have seen a self-organizing team. Because for any situation that they will come across, they will know what to do. They'll say, oh, I know what to do. Oh, you want to take that? You want to? Oh, I'll do this. And they'll go and talk to the right people, and they'll go and ask for the right things, and they'll go and they'll sign the right things. A team of team leads is a self-organizing team. What about a team of architects? That's a self-organizing team too, right? In some way. There's things that I might not be able to do. But if I'm an architect, my wish is to create a team of architects, so they don't need me for advice. They might need me maybe every once in a while just to have an interesting discussion, but they know how to think like I think. A team of security developers, right? So if my goal is to make myself unneeded, then my goal is to teach people around me, not to solve their problems, but to teach them to solve their own problems. So we're growing the team to solve the problems without us. That would require us while learning. Now here's the big fear. Turn this off. The big fear, if I teach everyone what I know, what's going to happen to me? It's true. And if you look at the world of DevOps and the world of automated testing today,
This is out of battery. Oops. Someone get it. I will. You can use this one meanwhile. Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. What was I saying? So this is what's called a interruption. Okay, so what I was saying is I was talking about how testers are afraid of losing their jobs because of all the automation going on. What's going to be the role of a manual tester? Here's what I think. The role of a tester is to teach everyone to be a tester. Basically to become a testing coach and to help create new tools that will help in the testing process. So a tester becomes a coach. Everyone becomes kind of a coach in an agile world. And by growing others, you will actually increase your influence factor. Because if at one point I'm an architect and I work in a team, then I only influence a single team and the design that they make. But if I teach them the way I think, then every team that they will go to afterwards have been affected. And they will teach their skills to other teams. So I actually make myself much more valuable to the organization. So I become that person, and maybe you've seen that person, that the organization brings in from another team to help a struggling team. And a lot of organizations have those people, and a lot of organizations have specific sub-organizations dedicated to those people who help define the methodologies in the organization, etc. There's a book by Jerry Weinberg called Leading Yourself and Others. Who knows who Jerry Weinberg is, by the way? Okay. He's a very smart person who wrote a lot of different books about many different things, and this is one of them. And I highly recommend that book. It's an old book, but its wisdom is still true. And he says there, management done right is a tough job, right? If it's tough for you, it means you're doing something right. Because management or leadership is not an easy thing. That's why usually people get paid more when they have a specialty. But if you're just taking the money but you're not taking responsibility for teaching people and doing the hard stuff, you're actually losing out on a whole bunch of stuff that you're able to accomplish. No, I think we'll just keep it this way for now. Just keep it. Thanks. Okay. So how do we grow the team? Right? If I just said, your responsibility is to grow the team, what does that even mean? What does that look like in real life? So I'll take a page from another book by Gerald M. Weinberg. This one is called Becoming a Technical Leader. Can you tell which books I read when I became a technical leader? This is one of them, sir. The person who just said no. By the way, this reminds me of Israel a little bit. I'm from Israel. In Israel, you say something, someone says something back, no matter what. You say good morning, someone says, how do you know? Anyway, learning about learning. So he plotted out the course of his gaming. He was playing a game called Flipper. You know that game? You have the machine, you go like this. And there's this two hands, and the ball comes in and it goes din, 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 and you make 1,000,000 points or something. You know that game? Thank you. Anyway, he was plotting his abilities in the game over years. Or was it months? I don't remember. He was plotting, and he says, hey, I was getting better all the time. But as he was looking with more detail on the progress, he saw that there were periods of slow progress where he became slowly better, and then there were periods of progress that was much faster. And he tried to understand, why is that happening? Why are there some areas of progress where I actually become magnitude better than I was? And those are the places where he learned a new skill, a new technique in the game. For example, playing with more than a single ball in the game in the same time. You get double points, etc. So he had to learn how to play with that new technique. And he became much better. So every time he learned something, he became much better. And when he didn't learn new skills, he was getting better, but very, very slowly. And with more detail, he saw that before he got better, he got worse, which makes sense. I mean, when you learn a new skill, you're usually worse than you were before at the beginning, right? When you were learning a new programming language, when I was moving from VB to C#, it was difficult. When I was moving from C# to Ruby, it was difficult. So at the beginning, even a hello world is difficult. You're much less productive. But when you learn that new skill, you're a level above what you were before. Because now you have perspective from different languages on solving the same problem. So, if you look at yourselves, a while back, before you learned the second programming language, or even if you look a while back, a year ago, and you look at the code that you wrote a year ago, a lot of times you will look and say, I can't believe I wrote that, right? I was a different person back then, right? How stupid was I? Or maybe, how amazing was I? And now, no, that doesn't happen usually. Usually, what happens is that you look back and you're kind of a little bit ashamed that you used to write that. And this is what those are. Those are called ravines. And the interesting thing about this is this learning process happens everywhere, right? I can think of this, and when I saw this, I thought about my kids, right? Here I was there at the first point, me and my wife with no kids, happy, having time, having money, traveling, speaking at conferences. And then immediately as our first child was born, bam, there was a decline in productivity. We weren't even able to, eat. People actually had to bring food to our house. We were so tired. We couldn't handle another person in the house that was ours. This person was ours. We had to learn all the skills again. How do you go to the grocery store with a baby? Right? I've seen one of the presenters here come in. You learn how to present with a baby. Right? You learn everything but with a baby. So it's a new skill. And you have to adjust. And after a while, you go to the next point. And you become a better person, a better version of yourself, because now having a baby is no big deal. And you look at people with no babies, right? At the first point. And you look down on them. And you say, ha, no baby for that person. They don't even know. And then when they have a baby born, you're so happy. Because now you know they're right there. And you know, and you say, haha, how's that ravine feeling? Don't worry, it will pass. Yeah, I know what it's like, ha ha ha. And you know you're okay, because you already passed the ravine. And you can't even believe that they are having such an issue with a baby. I mean, what's the big deal, really? And then our second baby was born. And immediately, everything we thought was true was false. And everything we knew about kids was wrong again, because now we had to learn different skills. How do you, put two babies to sleep without them waking each other up in a never-ending chain of destruction? Right? If you are two people and there are two babies, no longer can you just leave one person with two babies and go out shopping. Now you have to split one person, one baby. You have to learn to live 24 hours a day with a baby. What do you do when you go to work? When she goes to work? What do you do? And you have to learn. And then after a while, you learn. And you look at people with one baby and you say, ha, they're clueless. They have no idea how easy their life is. Because if you only had one baby, man, life is so easy, right? It's like a cornflakes commercial. Like everyone is laughing and jumping and cheering. And then we had our third child. I have 3 boys, by the way. Third child changes the picture completely. You have to teach your 2 kids to raise their little brother, basically. New skill. You become the coach. They become the bus factor. At some point, you step away, and you have a self-organizing team right there when they're playing together. It's the most amazing thing. Thank you. Hold on. You don't know what's coming. And then you look at the people with 2 kids, and they're struggling, and you don't understand. Why do they have such a hard time with 2 kids? I mean, 2 kids is so easy, right? If your wife takes one of the kids out of the house, you might as well play Xbox, whatever. Everything will be okay. People with 1 kid, what is 1 child? What does that even mean? Might as well have no kids. 1 child is meaningless when you have 3 kids. My wife has a brother who has 6. I have no idea what galaxy he's living on right now. I have no idea. And I'm not planning on finding out. We have stopped the factory. Anyway, what I'm saying is that learning is a process that has an undeniable ravine attached to it. And when I want to teach someone a new skill, what I expect is to drop that person into a ravine. And that person will have difficulty. And they will have, they will be annoyed. And they will be frustrated. And that's not a bad thing. When I teach people, I make sure that they're frustrated. Seriously. If I'm a team leader and my team is doing well and everyone's having fun and nobody's, everyone's relaxed, something is missing in that team. They're not learning new skills. So when I coach people, I usually choose one skill per person to learn, and I give them sometimes homework. And each person can have a different skill that they need to learn. And that skill will take them down in a ravine until it makes them better from that point of view. For example, I had a person in a team once that was very, very negative. So my role as a team lead for that team, or for that person specifically, I sat with that person and I explained how that hurts that person specifically. And we decided together, he didn't even realize that he had a problem, right? He thought he was doing everyone a favor by explaining how they're wrong all the time. And I'm sure you don't know other people like that at all. But I explained to him that this actually hurts him, and he didn't even realize. So with his agreement, we decided on homework. And his homework was, you can only say the word no more than 3 times a day. That's it. And write down whenever you use them. You have to save your no's until you can use them in the right context. The skill he was missing was choosing his battles. Because he was, know this and know over. Maybe he was right, but at some point you have to choose your battles to actually become a person in the team who's productive and everyone wants to work with. And, at some point he came to me very, very, proud of himself. He said, today at stand-up, I really wanted to say no, but I saved it. And I just stood there, and I didn't say anything, because I knew that there was an architecture meeting at lunch, and I knew there was something I wanted to say there. And I said, great, awesome, right? And that's an example. But it's very difficult for people to understand that learning a new skill is part of it is being frustrated, annoyed, etc. So if you find yourself learning something or being that frustrated and annoyed at work, usually it means you're learning something. For example, if I ask a tester to learn how to code so they can help create automated tools, it can be very frustrating for them, but it's a new skill. If I ask a developer to start writing acceptance tests, it can be very frustrating, and maybe they'll say, that's not even my job, but that's not true anymore. It's frustrating. And I accept the fact that they're frustrated, and I consider it part of the job because I know, because I've been there myself, is that at the end of the frustration, there is a jump. There is a place where it's no longer frustrating. When I teach test-driven development, it's very frustrating and very difficult because it requires you to unlearn how to code by writing the test before you actually write the code. And it's very difficult, and you practice. And maybe after 5 days, people are just beginning to go over the hump. And that's expected. So if I have a person in my class who's not frustrated, usually I'll take it as a sign that they're not learning anything, and I'll find out what they can learn so they become a bit more frustrated. But at the end of the course, people have been challenged, and being challenged at work is one of those things that everyone wants to be, to a specific degree. You can't just throw challenges at everyone continuously and expect everything to stay okay. Choose one, and not more than one per person. And that will usually keep you in the right place. This is my learning curve when I was learning Vim, by the way. I think I'm halfway. Okay, so at this point, everyone says, hey, that sounds awesome, Roy. We agree with you, but we don't have, what? Time? Who thinks we don't have time for that stuff? If in your project, do you have time to do all the stuff I just did? I just talked about? Who thinks they have time for that today? Who doesn't? Raise your hand if you don't have time. If you wanted to try to challenge the people in your team today as a lead, do you think you would have enough time to do it? Raise your hand if you think so. You think so, okay. 5 people. Okay, time. Let's talk about time for a second. So, one of the things that I teach is a concept called elastic leadership. And elastic leadership recognizes that a team can be in three different states: survival mode, learning mode, and self-organizing mode. Survival mode is where I would say 90% of teams are today. Survival mode, you know what that is, right? Just by the name. Survival mode is where you're committed to fixing things, and you're late on things you're already committed to, and you're expected to be even less late than you are. Basically, you're fixing fires that you're already late on fixing. And you're creating new fires in the process. So you don't have time to learn new things. So if I say to my team, hey, let's do test-driven development, and we have a fire to fix, and we're in survival mode, there is no way for me to spend time with the team and give them skills, because those skills require learning, and learning requires more time than we have. And learning can mean slowing down sometimes 5 or 10 times more than we are right now to be able to practice slowly. I feel like there's a killer approaching. Okay. Survival mode. Learning mode is where we actually have time to learn and we use it. Because you could be in learning mode but not apply. Learning mode is where a lot of the Agile coaches are, or they would like to be. And I had this discussion once. I was talking at a conference a few good years ago, and I was saying, as a team lead, you have to take charge of your team, and sometimes, you have to actually tell them what to do instead of just let them decide, because you don't have time to do that stuff. And an Agile coach at the end of the talk told me, there's no way this matches with what I'm teaching and what I'm learning, which is teach the team to make their own decisions and be agile and self-organizing. And I said, well, that's true, because I agree that a team should do that. But I've also seen situations where there's no way you can make that happen because you're out of time. You actually have to push things as a lead. And that translated into some kind of framework, which is the elastic leadership. And the idea is that a team in survival mode cannot become self-organizing because they don't have the skills and the time to learn those skills. So to teach them those skills, you have to move the team out of survival mode and into learning mode, where you are able to become a coach and take the time and make mistakes and learn from your mistakes and actually learn new skills. But if you're in survival mode and you're trying to teach a team test-driven development, there's no way you're going to succeed because pressure is too high. And the team will go back immediately to their previous state of mind. Self-organizing is where you want the team to end up. Self-organizing is where they don't need anyone else to solve their own problems. And the way you get there is through the learning phase. And in the learning phase, the team learns all the skills they need to become self-organizing. And at any one point, a team can move between those 3 states because the situation, the reality around them has changed. In one project, a team can be self-organizing because they already know that stuff top to bottom. They've done it 100 times. And then in a new project, I'll tell them, I want this bag to talk to this laptop. And they'll be like, I'm in survival mode. I have no idea how to even do that. We need time to learn. Do we have time to learn? I'll say no, they're in survival mode. If they say, we need time to do a proof of concept so we can even understand what this is, I'll say, okay, you have time. So now they're in learning mode again. But the fact that they're able to ask me and not ask their team lead to ask me, that's an example of self-organization. A team that's self-organized knows how to detect their own problems. Leadership styles also change between those 3 team states. Definitely a more command and control type of leader in survival mode is needed. Because when the ship is sinking, the captain does not call a meeting. The captain gives orders. And a lot of teams in survival mode need a leader to take them out of that and bring them into learning mode. But a lot of organizations are asking teams in survival mode to become self-organizing, which is one of the reasons all these agile transformations are failing. You're taking all these trying to survive teams just above water and saying, now you shall self-organize. They don't have the skills, and they don't have time to learn. They don't have time to practice. If I took my kid and he doesn't know how to tie his shoelaces, and I took him on a 2-day shoelace master course, and he came back, would he tie his shoes at the same speed that I tie my shoes? No way. He would have to slowly, over usually the course of a few weeks or even months, to learn that skill until he runs just as fast as he was before. And that's exactly what we're talking about in the learning mode. Command and control moves you from, or can help move you, into the learning, where you have to change your style and become a coach, and help them fail, and challenge them. But there's no reason to challenge people in a survival mode. We're already challenged. We're already in a place where we don't have time to start messing with this new skill. And a facilitator, basically someone watches from afar at the team as they self-organize. And maybe just coming in every once in a while if there's something that the team is not able to see for themselves. So we have to explain these things to the team, and we have to talk to them about it, and explain those different situations. When a team knows if they're in survival mode or learning or self-organizing, the team is already much more equipped than 99% of the teams out there to even know what they need to become better. And I'll talk just about one thing, because I don't think we have a lot of time left. Problem solving in the survival world. How do you get out of survival? And I'll explain that through the addiction process. You see, survival mode is an addicting process. And, you know, we're talking about fixing fires. And a lot of people feel very comfortable fixing fires. A lot of people feel very comfortable coming in the middle of the night, fixing the build, and becoming the hero of the office. And it's kind of a routine. It becomes addicting. Here's another example. You see, in an addiction process, you make a decision that makes you feel good, and then in the next time you have to make a decision, you choose the decision that last made you feel good. So we have a dilemma. We are writing a new feature. Do we write tests, or do we just get it done because we're under pressure? Well, we don't have time. Let's fix it. No tests. Feeling equals good. If it was JavaScript, I know it would be 3 equals. 1 week later, oh, we're coming across another feature request. We code it. Well, what did we do last time that succeeded? Oh, we didn't write any tests. That seems to be the successful pattern here. Let's do it again. Feeling equals good. 1 month / year / decade later, right? Our code sucks. We have to rewrite. How did we even get here? Life sucks. We should just rewrite the whole thing. We suck. I can't look myself in the mirror in the morning, blah, 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 blah. So we need to get out of survival mode because we want to have time to learn, right? So we don't repeat the same mistakes. We want to grow our team to solve their own problems. If that's our goal, we have to get out of survival mode. How do you break the survival addiction? Well, if you're a leader, and a leader, again, can be anyone who's a bottleneck, it's about taking a risk and exposing yourself, not the way you think, exposing yourself to your vulnerabilities up the chain at the company level. You see, if I'm a team lead, and I know that we're in survival mode, then there's no way we're going to get better unless we make things right. I'm not saying we do everything perfect, but we right the wrongs, which is re-estimate our current commitments. We draw a red line in the sand, and I talk to management and I explain the situation, and that's where the scary part begins. Oh, I remember. Thank you. I really, okay, I actually forgot. Okay, you guys surprised me, and thank you very much for that. Why was it? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, so we draw a red line in the sand, and I talk to management and I say, look, we're going to keep doing survival mode right now, but come July, or whatever the month is, we're going to be re-estimating whatever we haven't finished. We're going to re-estimate because we're already late, and we have to basically give you a real estimate. Right now, management doesn't trust us anymore anyway. So when we're in survival mode, the only way that I know of getting out of survival mode is to collect the guts that you have and actually explain the situation. And a lot of times, management already knows in some way, and they're happy to do something that will help solve the situation, because they usually are not happy with it anyway. Now, would you lose your job over it? The answer is no. Because management, if there's one person they remember, is the person they can actually trust. So if the entire organization in that upper level management meeting, everyone says exactly what they want to hear, and one person says the one thing they didn't even know, that person will actually gain more trust. And that's something that I've learned the hard way in many different organizations. So we take risks, we remove future commitments, or re-estimate. Re-estimate, because at the end of the day, when we talk about quality and all those things we will learn, those things are encapsulated in that one single estimate that we give as developers. So if my estimate, for example, does not include time for testing, for unit testing, for test unit, whatever it is, then I'm actually giving permission to everyone else to use that time for something else. And that's one of those core lessons that we want to teach. But to be able to do that, if I want to convince someone to put that stuff in their estimate, just because it's part of the work, because it's like debugging. I don't put debugging as a special line item. You have to coach people, and coaching people and teaching them is part of those core skills that are going to be needed in the new Agile world that we are trying very, very slowly to move into. Okay, let's see. We have just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to finish with an interesting list of books. First one is the book that I wrote called Elastic Leadership. And I think they actually have a couple of signed copies here at the conference. I know someone asked me to write them. Ilaha, I think it was you, right? Eli's checking her email. And Gerald M. Weinberg, Managing Teams Congruently. It took me 2 weeks to find out what congruently means. I'll challenge you to find it. Behind Closed Doors by Joanna Rothman, great book. And a book called Influencer, The Power to Change Anything, which will take you down a very interesting path of understanding why people do what they do. Those influence forces, I said, those 6 forces of influence, that's where that comes from. And those people have made amazing changes for huge groups of people and small groups of people. And that's where I take a lot of inspiration. And with that, I want to thank you. You can contact me through all these means. You can read my blog at 5wise.com, which is all about team leadership and problem solving. And with that, I think we have 1 more minute. Is that correct? Should we ask questions? Yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you.
So we have several questions in slide, and I will start with the first one. Have you ever worked in or led a team that you are describing?
Have I ever worked in a team that I'm describing? Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So
Actually, multiple times, but well, one of the times it was in a small startup, and we were doing a lot of the things that I was talking about, and we were moving to that kind of self-organization. Another was in a strong enterprise DevOps, enterprise organization, and it took me about 1.5 years to move the team in that direction. So it didn't start out that way, but it finished that way. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, a few more. Imagine, small team, everyone is a bottleneck. Some conflicts in decision making. Who should step up and what to do?
Okay, so a small team and everyone is a bottleneck. I was in that situation once, and one solution I recommend is to create a chart on a whiteboard, a chart of values we all believe in. So as an example, you want to make a decision about the API syntax of a specific method, and everyone on the team has a say, especially in Israel, 5 people, 25 opinions. You write down the list of values we believe in for a method API. For example, should be simple, should be readable, should be expectable, whatever. And we have these list of values. We draw in a table, and we say for each of these options that everyone is suggesting, from 1 through 5, how much does it live by each value? And then we basically we just map them all to specific values, and at the end of the day, at the end of the decision, usually after 30 minutes, or 25 or 20, one of them will come out on top because it answers the most values. Okay? And I can talk about it later too if you want.
Amazing. Thank you. So, even if the benefits of pair programming are obvious, it feels better for me and others to work alone. How to overcome?
It feels better. It means that you're going to be irritated, annoyed, and frustrated when you're doing it, right? So you should definitely do it. Because that's how you get over the hump. It's supposed to be uncomfortable because you're learning a new skill. So just because you're frustrated doesn't mean you should stop. It just means you should continue further on until you become, less frustrated, actually, and learn how to live in that world.
Amazing. The last question. How to exchange knowledge within a team of superheroes where people feel offended when someone else tries to teach them?
How to share knowledge if people are feeling offended, that would not be a sharing knowledge problem, it would be a coaching problem, and I would, as a team lead, I would sit with that person who has a problem accepting new teachings, and sit with them and coach them and understand what the problem is, where the behavior is coming from the influence forces, and try to see what is the next step in terms of maybe homework to work with that person.
Thank you, Roy. So we run out of questions, so you can catch Roy after the talk. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much,
Woo!
everybody.